Lockdown, lockdown. This is an emergency alert.
I went to what you might call a pretty standard high school. Not one of those sprawling suburban campuses, but a smaller, more rural kind of setup. Not tucked away in some leafy suburb with endless rows of houses, but out closer to the woods and cornfields. Some schools have senior classes with 500, even 1,000 students. Ours? I think our graduating class had just under 200. It was that kind of school where even if you didn't hang out with someone, you still knew their name and what bus they rode. By the end of senior year, I could probably name every kid in my class and recognize almost everyone else in the building. Coming from the small, quiet town of Pine Hollow, there wasn't much that made the local headlines. No major scandals or wild stories. After school, fun meant playing basketball at the outdoor court, riding bikes along the back roads, or sometimes just hanging out in the parking lot with friends. This was back in 2006, so before smartphones and social media took over teenage lives. Maybe kids these days wouldn't get how we lived, but that was normal to us. One thing that always stood out to me about Pine Hollow High was how, for the most part, we didn't have much of that stereotypical bullying you see in movies. No kids getting stuffed in lockers or chased down hallways for their lunch money. Sure, there were the usual cliques, and yeah, some teasing here and there, but it never crossed the line into full-blown cruelty. Not that I ever saw, anyway. Like any high school, we had our quiet students. But there was one guy in particular. I'll call him Eli for the sake of this story. Eli was silent. Not shy, not awkward, just silent. As if he lived in a world of his own, and the rest of us were watching him from behind a glass wall. But he wasn't strange-looking or anything. Honestly, he seemed perfectly normal, even kind, if you ever managed to get a word out of him. I shared one class with him, an elective that combined students from all grades. It was a computer course, back when our school was still using those clunky beige desktop towers that took 5 minutes just to boot up. The classroom was arranged in 2 columns of long tables, separated by an aisle. Each column had 4 rows of seats, and every desk had its own monitor and tower. The class was half full, maybe 26 students in total. Eli always sat alone in the second row, far left corner nearest the window. Everyone else paired up with their usual friends or classmates. He just kept to himself. Then the seniors in that class started messing with him. It began with offhand remarks. Does that kid ever talk? Or, creepy how quiet he is. The teacher, Mr. Crenshaw, didn't say much. He was more the type to let students police themselves, and frankly, he didn't have much backbone when it came to confrontation. Over time, the comments got a little more frequent. I remember one day a balled-up piece of paper got launched from the back row and smacked Eli right in the head. He turned around slowly, his expression unreadable, somewhere between sad, pissed off, and tired. The senior who threw it just laughed and said, "Hey, wasn't me," pointing to someone else. Eli didn't say a word, just turned back around, his shoulders a little slumped. That look stuck with me, like the weight of it all was finally starting to wear him down. I didn't do anything. I wish I had. A few weeks later, after school, I saw Eli sitting on the curb outside a gas station. Near the school, it was maybe a 5-minute walk from the campus. I was heading to my car. I just started driving that semester, and I paused when I saw him. Something about the way he was sitting there, alone, staring at nothing, made me stop. I asked if he needed a ride. His face lit up like someone had just turned on the power. He said yes. The ride to his house was about 10 minutes. We talked the whole way. I told him those seniors were losers, not worth a second thought. He laughed. Actually, laughed and said quietly, "They're not the only ones." He told me people had been picking on him for years, not just in that class. He didn't go into much detail, but it was enough to make me feel ashamed for never noticing, for never stepping in. When we pulled up to his house, I made some joke about how we lived so close to each other, then said goodbye. After that, every day in class we'd exchange a quiet "hey" or a nod. It wasn't much, but it was something. I wish I could say I stood up for him when the teasing kept happening, but I didn't. I was just another bystander. Then came the day Eli didn't show up. It was a Thursday, I think. I didn't think much of it until 7th period when the principal's voice came on over the intercom. Lockdown. This is not a drill. I still remember the way our English teacher, Mrs. Garrison, froze mid-sentence. The color drained from her face. She sprinted to the light switch and told everyone to move to the corner of the room. The fear in her voice sent a wave of panic through the room. We sat there for what felt like hours, probably 30 minutes, with the lights off and the door locked. Eventually, the principal came back on and told us someone in a mask had been spotted outside the building, carrying a black duffel bag. Security had locked the doors before the person could get inside. Police were already arriving. School ended early, and by late afternoon, everything was swarming with cops. That night, sometime after 2 a.m., I heard tapping on my bedroom window. Soft, rhythmic, like a fingernail against glass. I got up, heart pounding, and there he was. Eli. I cracked the window and whispered, "What are you doing here? How did you even find me?" He just said, "I tried to do something bad." I knew instantly. My stomach dropped. "Was that you? At school?" He nodded slowly. He didn't say much more. I asked how he found my house, and he said he remembered me talking about the convenience store near my street and recognized my car parked in the driveway. He said he didn't want to go home. He wanted to talk. He wanted someone to listen. I told him he couldn't come inside, that I couldn't be part of this. I begged him to go to the school, to turn himself in. When he refused to leave the window, I finally yelled, "Dad!" loud enough to wake my parents. Eli took off. The police came after we called them. I told them everything. They already suspected him from the earlier events. Apparently, he wasn't home when they checked. The next day, he either returned home or was found nearby. He confessed to bringing weapons to school, masked and ready to do something unthinkable, but changed his mind at the last second. As far as I know, Eli was charged with a felony-level threat, something like attempted terroristic action. He did time. Got out a few years back. I haven't seen him since. Sometimes I think about that ride home, how his face lit up just from a simple gesture, how he followed me because I showed him a flicker of kindness that maybe nobody else ever did. I want to believe he changed. I want to believe that night wasn't a warning of what could have been, but a turning point. Still, I can't ignore what might have happened, and I'll never forget the look on his face, or the sound of those fingernails on my window. This all happened back in 2016, when I was in the 5th grade. If you were around then, you probably remember that bizarre wave of creepy clown sightings that seemed to take over the news and social media for a few months. It was like the whole country was in on a weird joke or collective panic. Grown-ups mostly brushed it off as some dumb viral prank, but for us kids, it felt genuinely scary. It was a regular weekday at Cedar Heights Elementary, the same quiet little school in a suburban neighborhood where I still live today. Nothing unusual ever happened there. Nothing ever did. It must have been just past. Lunchtime, maybe around 1 p.m., when this happened. We were working quietly on an assignment in class, everyone mostly focused, whispering here and there. Then, out of nowhere, a girl across the room gasped and said loudly, "There's a clown! Outside!" I'll never forget the pitch of her voice. High, nervous, half laughing. Naturally, a bunch of us stood up to check. And yep, she wasn't joking. There really was a clown outside. He was standing only a few feet from our classroom window, just staring in. He wore this baggy, faded clown suit in mismatched red and yellow. The paint on his face looked smeared, especially around the eyes, which were ringed in black. His expression was frozen in a huge, exaggerated grin, and he just stood there, still as a statue, watching us. Then, slowly, he lifted one hand and started waving. Some of the kids started laughing nervously. Others sank back into their seats, clearly disturbed. Our teacher, Ms. Danner, walked quickly to the window, took one look, and said firmly through the glass, "Sir, you need to leave. This is private property, and we're in class." But the clown didn't move, didn't blink, just kept waving, like he was mocking her. Ms. Danner told us all to sit down and announced she was calling the office. She picked up the classroom, Eerie phone, one of those old corded types near the door, and stepped just outside into the hall to talk quietly. When she came back in, she walked to the windows and yanked the blinds shut. I caught a last glimpse of the clown, still frozen in place, waving like a haunted puppet. Not even 2 minutes passed before the loudspeaker buzzed to life. "Attention, staff. Please initiate lockdown procedures immediately." The voice on the intercom was our principal's, and there was a strange urgency to it. Firm, calm, but tense. Enough to signal to the teachers that this wasn't a practice drill. Ms. Danner sprang into action. Lights off, door locked. She herded us under our desks and told us to stay absolutely quiet. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the sound of breathing and the occasional rustle of clothing. Some kids giggled to keep from panicking. Others stared wide-eyed into the dark. We stayed huddled like that for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was probably just over 30 minutes. We had no idea what was going on outside the walls of our classroom. Eventually, the principal's voice returned on the loudspeaker, letting us know the lockdown had ended and the threat had been handled. All we were told was that the clown was gone. No more details were offered, but the weirdest part? Classes continued, like nothing had happened. No school-wide meeting, no follow-up talk, just regular math and social studies. Except none of us could stop thinking about it. You could feel the unease in the air as we filed out of the building at dismissal. My friend Brandon and I lived in the same neighborhood, so we usually walked home together. That day, we were halfway down Sycamore Avenue when 2 fifth-grade girls sprinted past us, clearly freaked out. One of them looked over her shoulder and said, breathless, "There's someone in the trees." Brandon and I turned and looked toward the narrow patch of woods that sat behind the school property. It wasn't a full-on forest, more like a barrier of thick trees that separated the school from the main road. But there, barely concealed by the branches, was the same clown, same costume, same makeup, standing just inside the tree line, only partially hidden. And he wasn't just standing still. He was waving again, slowly and deliberately. This time, it wasn't at us. It was directly at the girls who had just run past, like he was trying to call them over. Neither Brandon nor I said a word. We just took off running. I told my parents as soon as I got home. My mom didn't hesitate. She called the school right away. Later, I heard from another kid that the police were called again and patrolled the area behind the school. But no one was found. No one was caught. No one ever figured out who that clown was. To this day, I don't know if he was just some twisted person trying to scare kids or if he was waiting for something darker. What still creeps me out is that after the first lockdown, after the school believed the situation was over, he came back. He hid in those trees and watched kids walk home, and to this day, nobody knows why. This happened not all that long ago. I live on the edge of Camden County, just outside of the main city area. Pretty quiet suburbs for the most part. It's just me, my son, and my stepdaughter living together now. I say stepdaughter, but she's more than that. I legally took her in around 2017 after her mother, my best friend Tasha, was murdered. The details of her death became national news. Her husband was convicted not only for her murder, but for 5 others. He's serving multiple life sentences, no chance of parole. Just a completely horrifying case that changed everything for everyone who knew her. I work as a middle school teacher at the same school my son attends. He's a grade below the one I teach while my stepdaughter is a year ahead. Our classrooms aren't too far apart, so I always felt like I had eyes close by to check in on both of them if needed. This particular incident took place on March 30th, 2020, right when the pandemic lockdowns were beginning to roll out. Our school, Brookfield Intermediate, was located kind of in the middle of nowhere, 10 miles from the next school, 2 miles from the nearest gas station, and just about half a kilometer from the local nature park. We were isolated in a way that made everything feel safe until that day. It was a Monday, unusually warm for March. I was in the middle of a 6th grade math lesson when I got a message on my phone from the school's emergency notification system. Someone had arrived to pick up my stepdaughter. This system is linked to the official contact list. When someone checks in to collect a student, it alerts the primary guardian. But this made no sense. My stepdaughter didn't have any scheduled appointments, and we don't have any nearby relatives. So I messaged back quickly, letting the office know she shouldn't be leaving. No one should be picking her up today. They responded that the person was claiming to be her biological father. My heart dropped. That detail alone set off alarms in my head. The school wouldn't have any of his information because he wasn't legally allowed any contact. His rights were terminated long before I became her guardian. Before I could even reply, the phone line went dead silent. The staff member said she was going to contact the principal and get back to me, but something in my gut told me not to wait. I immediately called my stepdaughter's classroom and asked for her to be sent to mine. The moment she walked through my door, barely 5 minutes later, I felt a wave of relief. Then, right in the middle of transitioning back into my lesson, the lockdown alarm sounded. The shrill buzzer cut through the room, and the announcement came seconds later. Lockdown. Secure all doors. This is not a drill. I knew, without a doubt, it was connected to what had just happened. I ordered the students to push the desks against the door and covered the windows while ushering everyone into the corner. I kept my stepdaughter beside me the entire time. The lockdown lasted around 45 minutes, and I barely blinked through the whole thing. My mind raced with only one thought. How did he get out? When the lockdown finally ended, I was escorted out of the building by local police officers and brought in for questioning. They wanted to know how I recognized the man who had come to the school. I explained everything: the case, Tasha's murder, and how I had become legal guardian. I gave them the background, even though I could barely keep my hands from shaking. That's when they told me something that made my blood run cold. Earlier that day, a prison transport bus had been en route to a facility in another county when it was hit by a civilian vehicle that had swerved across lanes. The crash was fatal. 10 inmates died on the spot and 2 guards were left unconscious. But even worse, 20 prisoners escaped. Among them was him, the man who killed Tasha, the man who tried to pick up my stepdaughter. According to police, he never made it to our house. A patrol team had already been stationed there when the lockdown was triggered. That alone was what tipped them off. If he wasn't at the house, he had to be going after her at school. They never said how close he got. I'm not sure I even want to know. What keeps me up sometimes is the what if. What if I hadn't checked my phone right then? What if I hadn't trusted that gut instinct to call her down to my room? What if we hadn't been locked down fast enough? The officers assured me he never entered the building. I believed them. I had to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor in the hallway between my son's and my stepdaughter's bedrooms and stayed there till sunrise. I remember clutching my phone the whole time, as if it would go off again. But it didn't. He was caught not long after. I don't know the full story, and I don't care to dig too deep. All I know is that justice found him again. And this time, I pray it's the end of it. This happened during my freshman year of high school, and even now, years later, it still lingers in the back of my mind. I'm 21 now, and I haven't set foot in that building since graduation, but I remember every second of what happened that day. I went to a typical public school in a middle-class town called Riverview, not far from Columbus. Nothing flashy, just a standard American high school with red brick walls, long beige hallways, and the occasional poster reminding students to stay drug-free. We did lockdown drills every couple of months, just like fire drills. Routine? No. Big deal. So when the intercom came on during fourth period on a Wednesday and announced a lockdown, nobody even flinched. We had just finished a pop quiz in earth science, and most of us were quietly putting our notebooks away. This is a lockdown. Lock all doors, lights off, stay silent. Our teacher, Mrs. Chen, sighed like it was just another interruption. She stood, turned off the lights, and locked the classroom door, then motioned for us to move to the corner of the room furthest from the entrance. Everyone shuffled over, some of us giggling, whispering, half joking. That's how normal it felt. But then the speaker clicked back on. This time the same voice, our assistant principal. But something was different. It was fast, panicked. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Suddenly, everything changed. The mood in the room shifted instantly. No more laughter, no more whispering. Just a thick, suffocating silence. Mrs. Chen didn't speak. She didn't have to. She crouched near us, eyes wide, constantly checking her phone. Outside, we could hear faint sirens in the distance. Getting closer. And then, we heard footsteps. Just one set. Slow, measured, not like a teacher or someone rushing. Just walking. The sound echoed through the hallway and stopped directly, outside our classroom door. Nobody moved. Then came 3 soft knocks. Not pounding, not hurried, just casual, rhythmic. Knock, knock, knock. We held our breath. The doorknob began to rattle. Someone was testing it, not forcing it, just gently trying to open it. Then we heard a man's voice. Calm? Too calm. This is a drill. You can open the door now. We all looked to Mrs. Chen. She didn't say anything, just put her finger to her lips and slowly shook her head. The voice tried again. Another knock, then louder this time. "Hey, hello?" Still, no one moved. Then the knocking got more aggressive. The handle jiggled faster. The voice kept repeating hello like he was trying to sound normal, but it didn't sound right. There was something off in his tone, like he was reading from a script or mimicking something he'd heard before. Our classroom was on the first floor, near the science wing, with windows that faced a side courtyard. Some students swore they saw a shadow pass in front of the small window on the door. A couple of girls quietly cried. I kept staring at the door, watching that knob shake, convinced it was going to burst open at any second. And then, silence. The knocking stopped. The handle stilled. We waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. And then, a scream from somewhere down the hallway. Just one, sharp, terrified. A girl. Everyone in our room froze. Mrs. Chen was trying to keep it together, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She kept glancing toward the window like she expected someone to appear at any moment. Then, finally, we heard shouting, not the man's voice. "Police! Stay in your classrooms. Stay where you are." They were moving room by room. We heard their boots pounding down the hallway. Finally, they reached our door. There was a knock, and a voice called out that they were law enforcement. Mrs. Chen didn't open the door until they used a key and slowly stepped inside, badges raised. Only then did we stand up. We were led out in a single line, class by class. Outside, the school looked like a crime scene. Police cruisers, a SWAT van, flashing lights. I didn't see anyone injured, but I did catch a glimpse of a man in handcuffs being led away. He wasn't a student. He looked around 30, pale, long stringy hair, wore all dark clothing. Later that day, we were told a man had gotten into the building through a side door that had been left open for a delivery. Apparently, he was mentally unstable and had something in his backpack. They never officially said what, just that no weapons were found. No one was hurt. That was the school's line. All students and staff are safe. But I don't think any of us felt safe after that. I still hear the knock in my head sometimes, the quiet rattle of the handle, the voice pretending to be part of the system. It didn't feel like a drill, and it definitely didn't feel like it was under control. This happened pretty recently, not even a full school year ago. I'm only 15 now and had just started my sophomore year at West Haven High School in Greenville, North Carolina. I still remember that morning so clearly, even though I'd give anything to forget it. It was early, around 6:55 a.m., when I walked through the school doors. I'm always one of the first to arrive since my mom drops me off on her way to work. My first class that day was chorus, tucked away at the far end of the fine arts hallway, just past the theater and across from the old trophy case that no one really looks at anymore. I went to my seat like I always do, took out my phone, and started listening to music, zoning out while waiting for the bell. The classroom lights were on, the air felt calm, and everything was just routine, until it wasn't. I noticed my teacher whispering something, and the other students started moving quietly toward the back of the room. Confused, I paused my music, and I pulled out one of my earbuds. That's when I saw everyone filing into the supply closet at the back of the room. I still wasn't sure if it was another drill. We'd had a lockdown drill just the day before, so I hesitated. But when I looked at my teacher's face, I saw something different. She didn't look calm. She looked worried, so I followed everyone else into the closet. The lights were turned off. The door was shut. And just like that, we were sitting in complete darkness, squeezed together, with only a faint strip of light visible under the door. At first, I tried telling myself it was just a weird coincidence, maybe another practice drill. But then I heard sirens outside. That's when it hit me. This was real. I stayed as calm as I could, telling myself that panic wouldn't help. I sat there listening carefully for any sounds. Footsteps, doors slamming, voices, but I didn't hear anything else. We stayed inside that closet for almost 2 full hours, from a little after 7 a.m. until around 8:45. When we were finally released, the classroom felt different, heavier, like the walls themselves had absorbed our fear. I went back to my seat and quietly put my headphones back on, trying to shake it off, pretend it was over. But something still felt off, like the silence around us wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. I decided to ask my teacher what had happened. "Was it just a fight?" I said, half expecting her to brush it off. She looked me straight in the eye and said quietly, "It was much worse." Those words stuck with me. Later, I looked out the window and saw a line of cars stretching around the back of the school. First, I thought it was just regular parent pickups, except it wasn't dismissal time yet. In the classroom, some students had started whispering, checking their phones, trying to figure out what had gone down. Then, my friend Zayden leaned over and told me what he'd heard. Someone had been stabbed in the rotunda, the center of the school, where students usually hang out between classes. I didn't want to believe it. That kind of thing doesn't happen here, right? Not long after that, my phone lit up with a text from my mom asking if I was okay. I replied, yes, still in class. Then she called me. She told me she had driven to the school and parked near the baseball field with a bunch of other worried parents. She was crying. I was trying not to. Eventually, my name was called, and I was allowed to leave. When I got to the field, I found her standing by her car, looking completely shaken. We hugged tight, and I could feel how hard she was trying not to fall apart in front of me. She took me to the daycare where she worked so I could calm down somewhere safe. We sat together in a quiet room for a while, both of us crying. Her coworkers came in to comfort her, but I had to step outside just to breathe. I put my headphones back in and played 3 Days Grace, music that always helped me get through heavy stuff. I sat in the sun with my eyes closed, trying to pretend I was somewhere else. Later that afternoon, we found out what really happened. 2 students had been rushed to the hospital. One of them didn't survive. A teacher had also been injured trying to break up the attack. In total, 3 people were hurt that day. I searched online and found the local news conference. They confirmed what students had already been whispering about. A 16-year-old student had been arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter, assault with a deadly weapon, and several other serious crimes. 2 other students, one 15 and the other 16, were also arrested for disorderly conduct and participating in the fight. What really made my stomach turn was hearing about the Snapchat video. Someone had recorded the stabbing and posted it before. The lockdown was even lifted. My mom told me about it. She didn't let me watch, and honestly, I didn't want to. She said the person filming was running. The phone pointed at the ground, but you could clearly hear screaming and chaos in the background. There's a rumor the whole thing might have been gang-related, and even though nothing else has happened since, I still feel uneasy walking through that rotunda, like something's permanently changed. I didn't know the kid who died. I still don't know his name, but I think about him all the time. I think about how fast everything can fall apart, how something so normal can turn so terrifying in a matter of seconds. I hope he's at peace now, and I hope none of us ever forget. These are more than just stories. They're wake-up calls. Every story you've just read, though rewritten, is rooted in real fear, real people, and real moments, where everything changed in the blink of an eye, from silent cries for help ignored too long, to threats lurking just outside the window, to the unimaginable trauma that can unfold within the walls of a school. These narratives remind us of how fragile normal really is. But they also remind us of something else. The power of kindness, how a simple ride home or a friendly hello can be a lifeline. The importance of vigilance, how paying attention and acting fast can protect lives. The weight of silence, how what we don't say or do can speak louder than anything else. If these stories moved you, share them. If they made you think, talk about them. Start conversations with your friends, your school, your community. Let's turn these chilling moments into change. Let's turn awareness into action. No student should feel invisible. No teacher should have to shield their class from violence. And no one should ever be left wondering what if. Speak up. Check in. Be present. It matters more than you know.